Welcome to another episode of What Else You Got with Mitch and Margot. I'm Mitch, she's Margot, and we got a fun one for you today. So, what do you got?
You think I have a fun one for you today? Hmm.
You have one that we're entertaining today?
Entertaining. I don't think it's fun or entertaining. Well, no, I think it's fun. It could be entertaining. My question for you, my topic for you, food. I love food. As you know, I go to therapy every single week. One of the first reasons I started going to therapy is because I thought I had an eating disorder or disordered eating. And I met with three different therapists, four, trying to see who would be a good fit for me. And three of the four therapists told me, no, wait, maybe it was all four. Obviously, I've not thought this through very well. Uh, they all told me that I did not have an eating disorder or disordered eating. I had unresolved trauma. And so they all recommended that I go to a trauma therapist. Anyhow, I love food. And as I work with my therapist and talk about all of the ways that I use food as a crutch or a choice, she's also talked about food glorification and all sorts of food concepts. Bottom line is, I still love food. I still glorify food. I'm working on not using food as an emotional crutch. Do you like food?
Yeah, I know very few people who don't like food, but I fit in the category. Well, so there's basically two camps. There's the you eat to live, and you live to eat. And it's one of those that I probably sit somewhere in the middle where I like my food, but I like my food a little too much.
I love food. So I'm working on the concept of food glorification. I still don't think I understand it. Do you know what food glorification means?
Based off of the words, I have a couple ideas, but I have not heard that explicit term. My guess would be you put food on a pedestal as the all-powerful solution to things, and you lean into that.
Ooh, well, I'm gonna ask our other what co-host.
Host. Yeah.
Okay, define food glorification.
Now, I know you're coercing Google to help you.
Mm, coercing or cursing? Food glorification is a cultural and media driven phenomenon wherein food is elevated beyond its primary purpose of sustenance to become an object of aesthetic admiration, social status, and frequently overconsumption. Driven by social media influencers, marketing, and food culture, this phenomenon is, I always have trouble saying the word phenomenon.
Na.
Yes. Often presents highly processed or indulgent foods as visually in a visually appealing perfect light, contributing to a food hierarchy that encourages the pursuit of indulgent items over clean or healthy alternatives.
Well,
So,
I've got one really simple example,
okay.
at least that I think of. So, uh, within recent years, everyone's been very much entrenched by Wagyu beef, however you say it, which apparently is the top tier beef. And because it's got nice marbling, it's got the perfect blend of fat and meat, when in reality, Select does the job. And you can pay almost 10 times as much for it, and you can have it last for a little bit, or you get something that does the job. And so it's one of those that, because I make brisket occasionally, so I can either choose Select, Prime One, some other tier, or Wagyu. Wagyu for a brisket is like $250, as a normal brisket I can get for like $50. And it depending how you cook it, it can hit the same tiers of quality at the end, but because people idolize Wagyu beef, people go, I must have the Wagyu. And then another fun one is sushi grade salmon. And it's one of those that I actually dug into it a little bit. Do you know what the difference between sushi grade salmon and salmon is?
Nope.
Just how fresh it is. It's basically the exact same thing. It's just one is uh, you rushed it here, so you could get it same day it was caught, versus it took a day to get here. It's the same salmon, but one is marketed one way and one is marketed the other, but they're the exact same.
Well, not exact and I see what you're saying, but not exact same, because I could see how the freshness level is probably more critical when you're talking about sushi, something that's not typically cooked. And so I can see how freshness could play a factor. But you raise a really interesting point here on the topic of food glorification. If you can afford to go to a top tier fine dining restaurant where it's not just about the food, it's about the presentation, it's about the service, it's about the location, it is about the status. Um, so if you can afford to go to one of those top tier restaurants versus a drive-through fast food joint, they're both types of food could have food glorification involved, but there is something to be said for that fine dining experience. And so if you want part of your experience to be the fact that you're eating wagyu beef or sushi quality salmon, then is that part of the experience? And from a mental health standpoint, is that still food glorification? And is it still fine if you don't have any food issues? Or is it just playing into the culture and the capitalism of it all?
So just to make sure I understand what you asked, are you asking uh, if you have the resources and you participate it because you can and not because you must? Or are you saying if you participate in any of the higher elegancy, you are therefore doing food glorification?
Your question of my question is a great question because I'm not even sure what the question was. I think the base question is what is food glorification and where do you draw that line? Because if you want to go and have an experience for a Friday evening and you choose to spend your hard-earned money on a high quality fine dining experience, and then you think about it all week long in anticipation of the experience, is that part of food glorification, whether you have food issues or not? Is it okay to look forward to that food experience? I think it's food glorification. And I think this is one area that I'm still working through understanding my issues with food is I enjoy the food glorification part of it. I don't know that I want to give up the food glorification because if I'm going to spend my hard-earned money on a fine dining experience, then part of the experience is the anticipation of the experience.
Yeah. Now, I think what you're saying is where you get the excitement and the anticipation. That's fine, but that you also have to be willing to go a couple tiers down for your normal day stuff. And so, with that, yes, you're glorifying the experience, but you're not lusting after the fact that you must have this food. As I probably say, food glorification is you stick a saltine on a pedestal because it's the absolute best when it's burnt. And why are you saying it's the best? Well, because you glorify saltines. Yeah, this one might be a little burnt, but it's still the absolute best. And it's when you take something to a undue level, or you say it must be this brand, and I will never have anything other than this, or I must go to this restaurant because of this. When there are suitable alternatives, but you must have a very specific thing. And generally, I think part of the food glorification is uh, possibly in undue quantities on top of the undue need for the food.
Well, and you said earlier, do you eat to live or live to eat? So I suppose it becomes the food glorification in the top tier restaurant. I suppose it becomes unhealthy if you get to the restaurant and they lost your reservation and there is no room for you and you are turned away. So if you have put too much emotional anticipation and dependence upon that experience and you're turned away, I suppose a gauge of whether or not you have a healthy attitude toward it is, are you fine going somewhere else, or has your evening just been ruined because you're not able to fulfill your anticipation and expectation of that food experience?
I think I'll even tweak it a little bit. Where do you reject the cappuccino because they got the heart wrong in the presentation of it when they pour in the cream? Do you reject a plate of food because there's one too many broccoli, or because the lines aren't straight? Do you reject the food because um, it's walked by a certain table and therefore you can't have it? It's when you start rejecting things for superfluous reasons, that's where we start having this. You are prizing the glorification of the event over what you're trying to have. Because if you're willing to eat something that, yeah, it might be all toppled over instead of cleanly stacked, and you're still willing to eat it, you're not glorifying the food to a unhealthy state. You're glorifying the experience, and the food is the benefit of it. And so it's really one of those of, are you going for the perfect state, or are you going to enjoy the food in whatever state it makes it to your table?
Well, and I think you used the right word, perfect. I think if you're focusing that much attention on the perfection of a situation, then you've got other things to talk about with your therapist than just food issues. You've got some perfectionism issues that need to be discussed as well. So, yeah, yeah. I am learning so much from going to therapy each week. I really value the education I'm getting. I am still struggling with the concepts of food, when it's food glorification, when it's okay, when it's, you know, causing me some sort of problem, and what exactly is food glorification? And who's to say if your definition of food glorification and the lines drawn around it need to be adopted as my definitions and lines also?
I think if I had to over summarize it right now, it would be excess in any form and directed towards food, and a unreasonableness on top of that, where, and I say excess and unreasonableness because some people will glorify bad food because they can get the quantity, and they glorify the quantity over it, and that's part of the other side of it. And it's one of those that you take it outside of the normal realms, where occasionally I eat a little too much in excess because I'm looking for a very specific outcome, uh, basically a sugar high or a dopamine dump or whatever. And so I'm chasing that over what I'm actually eating, which is on the other side of the food glorification of, you're looking for a very specific effect. I guess that fits in the same realm of drinking too much. But, and then on the other side of, do you want the food to be perfect? And so it's a mix between those two. And depending on what tier you are, because if we go, you live to eat and you eat to live, depending how close you get to the you live to eat, that's where you start getting the food glorification, is when you get more on that end of the spectrum.
Do you have a favorite food? Let's glorify some food. Let's glorify some food.
Uh, there's a bunch of different ones. It really comes down to what I'm going for, because there's a couple of
If you
curries that
if
are
you
just
could
phenomenal.
only pick one food to be your favorite,
Um, Probably cold pizza with Canadian bacon and alls on it.
my if I can only pick one food, I'm picking pizza because it comes in so many varieties and
Oh, I
options.
thought you said only one option,
Right.
not.
Pizza.
Uh,
Pizza is my one food choice because you
uh,
can have dessert pizza, you could have vegetarian pizza, you could have all meat pizza, you could have cheese, no cheese, you could have red sauce, you could have white sauce, you could have salsa for the sauce. Pizza is the winner.
Yeah, so I was a little too specific, but yes, pizza was going to be my general category one.
I love pizza. Pizza is the most versatile of all foods and the one that we should glorify. All hail pizza. Well, not really. I'm not joking. I love pizza. I love pizza. Sometimes I will order a large or extra large pizza just for me, and then I will cuz fresh pizza is the best. And then I'll enjoy a couple pieces of my pizza when it's fresh, and then I will bag up the rest in single serving sizes and throw them in my freezer, and then I can just grab one as lunch for the day or whatever. So
So I'll ask this question because I have what I'm about to describe, that the problem of it, where when it's fresh pizza, do you eat what you're supposed to eat, or do you indulge and have a little bit more? Because usually when I get a fresh pizza, I can eat almost double of a normal leftover set.
I used to do that, but as I've been working on my food issues, I I'm starting, and this was very hard for me to learn, but there's a thing called a natural pause point when you're eating, and it's taken me a really long time to recognize that. But so I'm trying to respect this natural pause point. So when you're eating and you feel yourself take a natural pause, that's actually a moment where you're supposed to pause and evaluate, do I really need more food right now? Or have I satisfied my nutritional needs? And then you make a conscious choice of whether to continue or to stop. And so I'm trying to recognize that natural pause point, and then I'm trying to change my behavior and make a different choice in that moment and put the food away at that point, knowing that if I want more later, I can have more. But it is hard when it's fresh pizza because, yeah, I used to always overindulge in fresh pizza. And now I'm trying to create new neural pathways in my brain. And so one of those is to make a different choice at that pause point.
Yeah, and as you say, pause point, I thought so. I'm going probably the best image that I have in my head is you're at a restaurant with friends, you're just going to town eating, you're having a conversation, and just at that one point, you look at your food and you go, okay, I got about a half to a quarter of my plate left. You look up, you look at your friends, see what they have. That's a natural pause point because you are checking in, going, I've cleared my plate. You're thinking through versus if you were eating, having a conversation, and in between your speaking segments, you take a bite, but you're just eating, you're not paying attention. It's when you take the time to evaluate your plate, everyone else's plate, and the conversation. That's your pause point.
Yeah. So it's taken me a long time to be able to feel, see, recognize that natural pause point for me because previously it's just about consumption basically. And so I'm trying to learn new things. And so with the fresh pizza, yes, it's hard to stop, but I'm choosing to stop knowing that there's plenty of pizza. I can warm it up in the oven. I can warm it up in the microwave. I can eat it cold. Yes, it will taste different than when it was hot and fresh to begin with, but it's still delicious. It's still awesome. Do you have a favorite dessert?
I do, but I want to finish one thought on the pizza real quick. Pizza is actually a good example of food glorification, not just on the quantity, but there's some people that they swear they must have a certain brand, but that part's not the problem. It's when because there's a lot of brands that are more or less about the same tier. There's ones that are or price tier, I should say. Ones that are a little bit cheaper, ones that are a little bit more expensive, and then there's a couple of brands that I know that it's almost like twice the price of everything else. If you must have that top tier every single time because it's the most expensive, not because it's the best quality, because it's the most expensive, that's where you start getting your food glorification because you're jumping to a excessive tier because of some qualifier, whether it's price, whether it's quality, whether it's the salt
Social,
guy
yeah,
sprinkling salt.
social status.
Yeah. And if you're jumping up because of some non food related thing, that's where we start on the problem. Because there's some brands of pizza I don't care for because they're either too greasy, not quite. There's some that I just absolutely love because to me they taste clean. That's perfectly okay. It's when you start jumping in excess to hit very specific things versus it's clean. I like the greasy. I like the cheesy. I just like the seasoning they do. That's all fine. It's when you jump excessively towards it.
Well, now I just really want to have a pizza taste what's it called? Taste test.
Mm-hmm.
What are those called? I
Yeah,
just
taste test.
I really think that if we could just snap our fingers, that's how the rest of this episode would go. Would we have all these different brands, all these different styles? I volunteered to do the pizza taste testing.
Yeah, and the nice thing is there's so many different options, and that's one thing I love about just living is how many varieties of pizza are there? How many different crusts are there? How many different toppings? There's a bunch of variety, and variety is fine. Having a favorite is fine. It's again, if you have to have a excessive amount of something, that's where you start having problems.
I love pizza.
Hmm. So yes, dessert. Shall I toss it back at you and say what's your dessert, or do you want me to
Well,
answer mine?
if I can only choose one, it's going to have to be chocolate because chocolate comes in so many forms and varieties. If I could choose more than one, I would choose chocolate cake and, well, but that wouldn't be up at the top. Cookies would be next up at the top. So chocolate, cookies, and yeah, I'd be perfectly content with just chocolate and cookies. There's so many. Oh, I love brownies. Oh, I love ice cream.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think ice cream's my one consistent, but I rotate through mine, which makes it harder to measure. But
Well, and
I think it's ice cream.
if you could get um, a base of high quality vanilla ice cream, crumble some freshly baked cookies on top of it, and then drizzle some hot, gooey chocolate fudge sauce on top of that, then I've got all my bases covered. I've got chocolate, cookies, and ice cream. That sounds like food glorification to me.
Yeah, so because you have that perfect state of what you're going for, and I actually wanted to poke holes in it a little bit
Mm,
because you said high quality ice cream. So are you
yes.
saying excessive quality, or are you saying one that is clean, it's good, it works, or one that has very specific blends? What do you mean by high quality?
For me, a high quality ice cream is one who has a very short ingredient list. And so I think that's one of those points where you could argue quality versus brand. But the first thing I look at if you removed all of the brand names and recognizable packaging off of the ice cream containers, I would still look at ingredients first. So I I know that there are a lot of um, cheaper ice creams that have a lot of extra ingredients that actually cause a lot of intestinal problems in people. And so sometimes they think they're lactose intolerant and can't eat it because of that, when in fact it's one of those trillion ingredients that are thrown into a lot of cheaper, for lack of a better term, ice creams. And so yes, I do have a favorite brand. I don't only buy that brand. I'm not a complete brand snob when it comes to ice cream, but I will look at the ingredients list. And if there's because ice cream doesn't need very many ingredients, especially if you're talking about vanilla or chocolate. So when it comes to a vanilla ice cream, the ingredient list has to be really, really short for me to purchase it.
Yeah, and uh, one thought that came to mind is yes, you have your preferred brand, and it's probably within the mid range of prices where it's not that on edge. Now, if you have to go 2 towns over, 4 counties over, 2 states over to get your 1 gallon of ice cream from this one specific place because they do it the old fashioned way and it must be certain ways, eh, you're glorifying it a little on the height. Now, some
But
people that
but
that's their treat. Go ahead.
You know, I like to interrupt. I'm trying so hard not to. But if we're talking about, okay, so you know, I have a weakness for ice cream. My therapist also knows I have a weakness for ice cream. And I think in a previous podcast, we talked about barriers things that will slow you down in the process. And so I do not generally keep ice cream in my house because it just doesn't, I eat it. And so, as far as your example of traveling, you know, 2 towns over to get your homemade, hand spun, whatever ice cream, you know what? If you use that as a way to eat less ice cream, I don't think it's necessarily food glorification. It could actually be part of your process to limit your intake. Because if you're going a long time ago when I was on, I don't remember what kind of diet it was, but I was on a diet, and it said in the introduction to the book, it said, if you're going to go off your diet or break, the rules of your diet, then make sure you're only doing it for foods you truly love. And so that has always stuck with me. So whether you're on a diet or not on a diet, if you're going to go outside of your food plans, then make sure you're breaking your own rules for something you truly love. So if you're trying to eat less ice cream, but you're deciding to go ahead this weekend, I'm going to eat ice cream. So if you want to travel over 2 towns to get your most favorite ice cream, I think that's okay, because it's a barrier. It slows you down. If you say that's the only time I'm going to eat ice cream is when I'm willing to drive 2 towns away to get that favorite one. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, and that's where moderation and discipline and control come in. Where I'm going, yeah, that you might be glorifying the experience over the food, and because that's the big delineator I keep going off is the experience over the food, and you're going to get that treat because you did X, Y, Z, versus um, I have it every single day. I have it every minute, and I must have only that, and I must go get it. Where you plan your week around collecting that one thing and consuming it, then you're on the excessive end. But if it's a once a month you get to go out, or even once a week you get to go out and get it, and it's a reward, that's different. But if it's you will uh, flip your entire schedule upside down because you realize you open up the freezer and there's nothing there, cancel all your important meetings because you're going to go get it, that's where you have your problem.
Well, and then if you're that emotionally invested, just like the restaurant example, how are you going to feel if you show up to buy that ice cream that you've put so much time and energy into planning for, and you get there and the store is closed today? You know,
Or they went out of business.
or they went out of business. How's that going to impact you emotionally? And if it impacts you negatively, then there's some issues to be dealt with there.
Yeah, there's a bunch of different ways, and at the end of the day, it really comes down to how does it dictate your day? Does it is it a reward, or is it something that is a requirement? And it really goes back to, do you live to eat, or you eat to live? And it really is, where are you on that spectrum, and how much do you disrupt your day to eat?
And if you are set on that particular food and you're going to be devastated if you don't get it, look also at the ritual around that food. So, like your example of driving 2 towns over to get a particular ice cream. Well, it's not just about how it feels when that ice cream hits your tongue, it's about the ritual of planning ahead to make the trip, getting in the car, snacks or music during the car drive over there, and the thrill of finding the perfect parking spot as you're driving up to the ice cream place, and then the process of going in and what it smells like inside the ice cream store. Does it smell like freshly baked waffle cones? The sensory rituals of the process. And so if it's as much about the ritual as it is about the end product, the ice cream on your tongue, then maybe there are ways in your day that you can create different rituals around non-food items so that you can still have the ritual experience without food being the object or the reward.
And just kind of expanding on that, so whenever I go on a specific cruise that goes to this specific port, actually it's not a specific cruise, but whenever they go to this specific port, there's this key lime pie shop that I just, every time I go there, I gotta go there. Why? Because it's part of the greater experience of going on a cruise and having to go past that, but I don't plan a cruise just to go there.
This has been kind of an interesting concept about food. I still think in the future we ought to invite a food expert to come on and talk with us about food. I think that would be fun and informative because sometimes you and I churn our own ice cream, like that little metaphor I made there. And you and I do not have perfect knowledge on any topic, I don't think. And so it would be nice sometime for us to tap into the expertise of someone who works with disordered eating.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, what else you got, Mitch?
I think that's it for this one. Once again, thanks for showing up, listening. Like, comment, subscribe. Mention what your favorite food is, what your ritual is, where you sit on the spectrum of live to eat or eat to live. And we will see you on the next one of What Else You Got with Mitch and Margot.